Today, I've invited Kate Kayaian to the show. I think you'll really enjoy her story of reinvention and the realities of what that process looked like for her as she navigated a major life transition. Enjoy! Welcome to Your New Chapter, the podcast for women navigating major life transitions who are ready to stop feeling overwhelmed and stuck and start creating the lives they desire from the inside out. Kate, welcome to the show. Kate, I want to jump right in. Can you tell the audience about your career as a classical musician? Because I find it fascinating.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for inviting me on, Sharlene. I'm so excited to be here and talk to you about all of these things. So my life as a cellist started when I was 4.5 years old. I had a crush on a boy. He was my best friend's older brother. He was 8 and he played the cello. And I knew at that age that we could only get married if we played the same instrument. And that knowledge dictated the next 4 decades of my life. I did love the cello. I really loved it. I was good at it, apparently. I had great teachers, and I had a lot of really wonderful opportunities. And I just went along that track of you do these things, and then you do this, and then you do that, and you go to these schools and these festivals. And there I was, so fortunate to have an incredible career as a classical musician, which not a lot of people get to do. And it is as weird an industry as you can imagine. You know, we work every weekend, we work nights. Our weekend, I say in air quotes, is Monday. We all get Monday off. But yeah, I got to travel all over the world. I got to work with incredible musicians, classical and non-classical, right? I got to perform with Jay-Z. I got to perform with Mary J. Blige and Pharrell. I mean, everyone. Josh Groban, Phil Collins. The list goes on and on. So I got to do a lot of really cool things. And most of my colleagues were my closest friends. So it was a really wonderful life that I was fortunate to have and grateful to have.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. It sounds like adventure. I'm sure you traveled quite a lot with all of that. It sounds like you had a wonderful career, but I want to touch on something that you said. You said it started at 4 and it was kind of just the path you took. And when I was reading your book, you mentioned about programming. I think it was the way you put it, and that we can really only aspire to what we see, or, well, you were talking about a little boy who, the only aspiration he had was his cousin who was, I think it was his cousin who was a pizza boy. I want to touch on the idea of programming and going on this path. Was this a path that was created for you, do you think?
Yes and no. Yes and no. And I think that's a really important question that we should all have about how we got to where we are in our lives. You know, whether you're happy, sad, frustrated, like how did you get here? You know, again, I liked the cello. I mean, I didn't between the ages of like 11 to 13 because no pre-teenager likes anything that they have to do, right? That's just how it goes. But again, my friends were doing it. So if I wanted to see my friends, I had to go to cello class on Saturday. Um, a lot of my friends' parents were professional musicians. Mine were not, but they were very creative people. They were not parents who were pushing me to go be a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer. They were very much, choose your path. And they were very supportive of my music career, my music training and education. And so, yes, I loved the cello. And so my cello teacher was the one to say, okay, these are the schools that you audition for conservatory, for college. And then my college teacher said, okay, this is your next step. These are the competitions you should do. These are the festivals that you should do. And they were mentors, right? So they were taking my talent and they were taking my passion for it, and they were guiding me down this inevitable path. And it never really occurred to me to question it. Because again, so many people along the way get weeded out. They don't make it into the next orchestra, so they age out, so they can't be in a youth orchestra. Or they don't get into music school. It's very competitive. And so if they don't get in, okay, that's it, right? or they don't get into the festival, they don't make the competition, they don't have any success. So many people get weeded out of this process that if you're still in it, like why would you take yourself out of it? Why would you question it? Clearly, you're talented and you're lucky, and you should just be grateful for all of it.
So this path was created for you, but you loved it. It sounds like, one, you were very talented and you loved it. And you've described a long period of your life in this career where you enjoyed it. So what was the thing that inspired you to leave that career?
Yeah. I think it's something that a lot of people can resonate with. It's this sudden feeling of this beloved jacket that I had worn for so long. It's like I put it on one day and it just didn't fit. And like, gosh, my body hasn't changed. Nothing's changed. I don't understand why this jacket doesn't fit anymore. And I love this jacket. It's beautiful. It's great, but it's uncomfortable. And for me, I think it was just a natural maturity of, and by maturity, I don't mean that the other people not making this decision are immature. I just mean sort of the way I evolved in my life and matured through my life. There were other things I wanted to do at 8 p.m. on a Saturday night. And it's not like in a company, okay, you have to work long hours and then you become an executive and maybe you have to work even more hours, but then you get C-suite level and you can kind of work less hours. You get to go play a round of golf every once in a while, right? Um, you can take a day off if you need to. You can go do this. Not that they don't work hard, of course, but that doesn't happen for classical musicians, right? If you are successful, if you are in a career, you're playing concerts, and those concerts are on the weekends and they're in the evenings. There were just other things I wanted to do. I wanted to attend people's weddings. I wanted to attend dinner parties. I found that I really enjoyed going to a performance. And sometimes I found that I enjoyed going to a performance more than I enjoyed performing the performance. And I had always had this little bit of an entrepreneurial bug. I like to start little camps in the summer when I had free time, when my friends came over, they wanted to play dollhouse and I was like, let's make friendship bracelets and sell them on the street. I always had some sort of idea for a business. It's just how my brain worked. And that really started to come into the forefront in my late 30s, early 40s. And I suddenly had these thoughts of, what if I didn't do this forever? And when I talked to people, Sharlene, I talked to some really trusted colleagues and friends, and I expected them to be supportive and say, yeah, you have lots of talents, Kate, and you could do anything. You're really smart. And no, they looked at me and said, you can't quit. You don't know how to do anything else, and you're too good at this. In full love and support, right? They said, you cannot quit. You are not allowed to. And it's true. I didn't know of any example of somebody quitting a career like I had that wasn't by some sort of crisis or, that they had to. People left classical music if they were forced out of it by an injury, by some sort of crisis in their life, by some traumatic event. They didn't quit just because they wanted to do something else.
You've said so many things here. This is so interesting. You said that it just didn't fit anymore. And you described that you just wanted to do other things. You wanted to experience other things. But you also mentioned that this didn't come as a result of crisis. So often people need to pivot or reinvent. And I know you're not a particular fan of reinvent, the word reinvention, but I've read your book and I listened to
It's a
your
loaded
show.
word. Yeah,
But I use it a lot. So this is my show, so I'm going to say it.
absolutely.
But
I think it's a great word in certain contexts.
mhm, understood.
Yeah.
And I'm a stickler for words, so I might join you on that bandwagon at some point. Specific word meanings. But often people associate the need for change with crisis. You were
Mhm.
not in a crisis. There was something in you that wanted something different. I really love that you shared that. A recent episode was about, what if you've chosen to start over or reinvent yourself or, but it's not from a crisis. It can be from a really
Mhm.
good place. So thank you for sharing that. And I love that anyone listening can think, actually, that's me. I'm not in a crisis, but I do want something different. And I have this pull towards that. So in your story, you're feeling this thing. You speak to those you love, because it is important to do this in community, because we can't do things in
Mhm.
isolation. And your community love you and you love them, but it wasn't that encouraging at that time.
No, not at all.
And then you also mentioned that you didn't really have any prototype, so to speak, of anyone who had done what you were wanting to do. What was the process like, from moving from what you'd known for so long into something new?
Yeah. This was a really interesting time for me. I had recently moved to Bermuda from Boston. In Boston, I was fully enmeshed in the classical music scene. I was working every single day. In Bermuda, I had lots of free time to practice. I just needed an airport to get to my concerts, and I had a lot more time to think. And the tricky thing of this was that I didn't have a concrete other path that I wanted to go down, right? I've seen people, in fact, I have a friend who was a great cellist. We went to school together. We did a post-grad program together. She's a brilliant cellist. And then she said, you know what? I want to be a neurologist. So she went to medical school. She had a very clear thing. I want to go to medical school. She got into medical school. She became a neurosurgeon, actually, of all things. And then she did that for a while and decided she missed cello and she came back. And that was the only example I had of somebody leaving the industry, but she had a very clear purpose. She had a very clear other plan. I just knew I wanted to do something else. I wasn't quite sure what it was. So I started reading books and listening to podcasts and just following my sense of curiosity. I took a lot of marketing classes, business classes, and just started letting things percolate a little bit. And it was when COVID hit that I suddenly had this opportunity to say, okay, you know what? There are no concerts for the foreseeable future. My tours got canceled. Everything was canceled for at least 6 months. So I said, okay, I'm going to give myself 6 months. I mean, the world had given me 6 months, and I'm just going to see how I feel. Because everybody's telling me that clearly I'm just burnt out, but I didn't feel burnt out because I felt like I could keep going, perfectly felt like I can play all those concerts. Like, I don't feel the need to crawl in bed and cancel everything. Like, I'm perfectly happy to keep doing this. I just don't want to, right? It was a very different feeling. I just don't want to. I'd rather do something else. And so I had this almost a gift. I hate to say anything about that horrible time, a gift, but it was a gift for me to be able to step back and just see what happened. And what happened were some coaching opportunities. I created a program online that became a big success. I learned how to follow my gut because the program that I started was for other cellists. It was all online, and my friends and colleagues all told me that it wasn't gonna work. I said, okay, it's a nice idea, but I don't think that's gonna work. I don't think people are gonna be interested in something like that. And that was devastating to hear. And I didn't listen to it. In the end, I said, no, my gut is telling me that this is necessary, that there is a need here, and I wanted to do it. And following that sense of I see a need and I have the skills, because remember all those marketing and business classes I had been accumulating, all of that following my curiosity without any idea of where it was going to take me, every single one of those skills helped me to create the first online classical music festival to exist. And dozens popped up after it. I coached those people on how to set them up. And that's how I started coaching. That turned into, it was more consulting, right? Like, here's a laundry list of things you need to do to set up a festival or a project like this. Then I realized that they needed coaching, right? Because I could give them the list, but imposter syndrome pops up, resistance, all of these things that happen to all human beings. And so my curiosity took me to study coaching and get some actual real life coaching skills. And I realized that I felt more alive doing that work than I ever did on stage. As much as I loved being on stage, this felt better. And that really, really hit me. And I didn't let that go. I was like, this is important. And what I have learned in hindsight and through the whole process was that I learned to trust my gut, and I learned to see what it was about being a professional cellist that I loved. And that was going out there in front of a room full of people and sharing this thing and affecting them in some way, sharing something expressive, communicative, essential, emotional, and creating that connection with somebody. And I still get to do all of that. I just don't have to practice 6 hours a day. And I don't have to travel with a cello through an airport, which is another nightmare. But yeah, it all came together, and by the time concerts were coming back up, I knew I booked one concert for, like, a year later and said it was in Bermuda. I didn't have to travel for it. It was with people I really enjoyed, and it was music that I know and love. I had performed it hundreds of times. It was gonna be a joy no matter what. And I said, either I'll be like, "Ah, okay, all right, I'll do this one because 'cause it'll be nice and easy and fun, but I don't wanna do any more," or I'll have changed my mind and said, "Yes, I really miss it. I have to be a professional cellist, and that'll be a good re-entry point." And it was the former. I had a great time. It was a great concert, really enjoyed it. Didn't need to do any more.
And it's good to know that.
Yeah.
That's, to me, represents knowing that that door has closed. That chapter is over. And what you've described here between your friend who you mentioned, she had a clear plan. I want to stop being a cellist and I want to start being a neurosurgeon. Many
Mhm.
women don't have that luxury because the old chapter ends and it was kind of ending for you, but COVID ended it for you. That door
Yeah.
is definitely closed and you couldn't go back. There was no opportunity,
Yeah.
but you don't know what the new thing is. And I love that you shared your journey, that it is a process, it is a journey, and that's okay. And if you listen to your intuition, you were taking marketing classes and other things, all of those things converge. But that place in between those two things is what I call the in between. And
Absolutely.
yeah, it's my the in between place. And
Yeah.
in the in between, we often need help. And I heard your voice light up when you mentioned about coaching. And, as a coach myself, I love helping people in the way that you do as well. And so
Yeah.
helping people in this in between is now what you get to share.
Absolutely. And, Charlene, that's why I wrote the book, because I wrote the book that I needed 4 years prior. I wrote the book that didn't exist when I was like, I'm feeling lost. I want to change, but I don't know what I want to change to. Right. So I couldn't just say, okay, I want to go to medical school. All right, this is what I need to do. I need to take these classes. I need to pass these exams. I need to apply. I need to do this, that, and the other. I didn't know. And there was nothing out there that I could find that could guide me towards figuring it out and being okay with oh, this feels awkward and uncomfortable, this in between place, and how to navigate that, and how to navigate it, how to be okay with the uncertainty, how to find clarity in the uncertainty. I talk a lot about, and Martha Beck talks about this in her book, The Way of Integrity. She calls it the path of not here. And that trying something and having it not feel right is just as important. It's great information to say, right? When I was just consulting and just saying, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that, and then you'll have a successful program. If that was all I was going to allow myself to do, that was not interesting to me. I could just, I could write an ebook and hand it out to people if it was just that, right? So I know, okay, I don't just want to consult. I am interested in the deeper layer of coaching beyond that. So yeah, that in between place is, I think it's a beautiful place where we get to evolve and ask some really important questions about who we are, how we became that, and who we want to continue to grow into. And that's what the book is all about.
And in the book, you speak about redefine. You have a whole section on redefine. So in this process of being in the in between and finding your way to the next thing, how do people have to redefine themselves?
Mm. Well, I think it's an inevitable desire to want to be able to define ourselves clearly. I mean, think of an introduction. You meet somebody new and they say, "Oh, what do you do?" Well, when you're in that in between place, you know, I don't know. I mean, there was a period of time, like quite a few months, where I would change my answer depending on who I was speaking with, right? If it was a parent whose kids played, studied music, I was a cellist. I'm Kate, I'm a cellist. I don't teach anymore, right? If it was a potential client, okay, I'm a coach, I'm an author. If it was somebody who I was really just meeting, I had no context and they didn't really care what I did, it was just sort of a meet and greet, I would just tell them that I wasn't working currently, wasn't doing anything at the time. I mean, I live a life of leisure. How nice for me. You know?
Right?
But it's so interesting. I was just at a party last weekend, and there was somebody there who knows me. Now, I volunteer in the community, and one of those roles is I'm the president of the Bermuda Philharmonic, right? As somebody who spent a life in classical music, I know a few things. And so I work there and I conduct some of the concerts. And this person only knows me in that capacity. And so we were at a party and he introduced me to somebody and he said, "Oh, this is Kate. She's a cellist." She says cellist. And I said, "Well, I don't know if I'm a cellist some more." He goes, "Right. Sorry. She's a conductor." And I just had to laugh because he doesn't know that I wrote a book. He doesn't know that I am a speaker or a coach or that I have a podcast. He doesn't know that side of me at all. And sometimes you just have to roll with it. Sometimes this feeling of in between and that definition is going to be a little bit in flux for longer than you realize. One thing that I talk about in the book is helping other people around you introduce you. Like my husband, when he said, I've always introduced you as my wife, Kate, the cellist. I don't know how to introduce you now. And for him, it was the insecurity of like, I don't really know who my wife is right now. But we solved it by just said, you can just introduce me as your wife, Kate, or even just as Kate. and and I can take it from there, right? You learn in this redefining process. There are exercises in the book that will get as deep as you want into details. What's your define your favorite ice cream color. Define your favorite color to wear. Define how you work best, right? Under what circumstances? Define what time you want people to communicate with you. Define how you best communicate with others. Is it on the phone? Is it via email? We can get into the weeds on that. But on the flip side of that, going through this process helps you get in touch with just who you are without the labels. Who is just Kate? What is she about? What's important to her? What are her values? If you strip everything else away, if you strip a job, if you strip ambition, if you strip ice cream flavors and colors of clothing, who is Kate at her core? Who are you at your core? And that's what really counts. And that's the whole middle part of the book is going big picture, who you are, and then down to the little details of right now, what are the things that you love to do?
I was so excited when our paths crossed because we have a lot of crossover in the things we do and believe. I have
Mhm.
a program called Identity Reset, and it's all of the things you've just discussed. What are your core values? What
Yeah.
boundaries are you going to set? And I think it can be a challenge to redefine ourselves or to define ourselves because so much of our identity has been tied up in what we do.
Mhm.
So you were the cellist, I was a
Mhm.
teacher and, it took me a long time to not define myself those ways.
Yeah. This ties into people's definition of reinvention or what they mean when they talk about reinvention. I'm all for waking up and just deciding you want to live your life in a different way. Sometimes that can be incredibly healthy and life-saving at times. And many people refer to that as reinvention, and I am 100% here for that. What I don't like about the word, or why I hesitate to use the word reinvention in my work, is because I believe really strongly that as we're redefining ourselves and these external labels and really leaning into who we are in terms of our values and our principles, what I have found in myself and what I have found with my clients going through this process is that what you used to do, what you currently do, and what you will end up doing in the future are really one thing, right? What I do, I mean, my book is even called Beyond Potential. And what I do as a coach is I help people figure out their potential and make a plan to go after it. What I do as a board president is I help the organization figure out what it could possibly be for this community and put a plan in place to go after it. What I did as a cellist was I figured out what I was possible of as a cellist, and I put a plan into place to go after it, right? Everything that I do is about like what's possible here? What can we do? How can we do this to the best of our ability? And then even go beyond it.
So good. So, so good. And it's freeing. I, like you, with identity, I prefer the term that I help women to discover their true identity, not rediscover, because I think it's always been there. It's just under so many layers sometimes.
Yeah. And when you were teaching, in hindsight, would you say that you were doing the same thing with your students?
Yeah, there's a common thread.
Yeah, there's always a common thread. To a certain extent, we are who we are in the best ways. In the best ways, we are who we are.
But sometimes we don't know it. And that's the work
Yeah.
that you and I do, is helping people to discover that
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
see what's
Yeah.
always been there. I love this. This is such a great conversation.
We could go on all day. I love it.
Yeah. So I'm following your story. What were some of the hurdles that you came across as you were doing this?
Yeah, well, it was, of course, the old chestnut imposter syndrome. When I was about to announce that first project, that festival, I suddenly thought, I have all of these voices of people saying, it's not going to work. It's a good idea, but people aren't going to go for it. And the imposter syndrome of, gosh, what if it is a big failure? And who am I to do this? Like, shouldn't Juilliard be doing this? Shouldn't New England Conservatory of Music or Curtis like, there are big institutions out there. Why aren't they doing it? Well, of course, they weren't doing it because they're big institutions and they can't make things happen in 2 weeks. Right? The bigger the institution, the heavier it is, the harder it is to shift quickly and move. Everything needs 20 meetings and approvals and all of that. Whereas a single person, just me, I can create a program in a day, right? But I really had to battle that imposter syndrome. I had to ask myself, like, okay, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? The worst thing that could happen was that the festival was a total failure and that people gossiped about, how I had done this silly thing and failed. And maybe my colleagues will laugh at me and then they'll forget about it. They'll move on because at the end of the day, they're friends and they respect me and it's going to be okay. Right. So being able to go through those things. So the first hurdles were, of course, imposter syndrome. Uh, I would say the lack of clarity, that in between part, is never easy to navigate. It's easier for me now to help people navigate it because I'm here to say, like, it's okay, it's normal, the same as you are. We can guide our clients to say, this is a normal part of the process. It's okay. I've got you, boo. Like, just keep going. And reintroducing myself. As I said, it's still an issue all these years later. People still think of me as Kate the cellist. They still want to introduce me as Kate the cellist. And it's not always worth having the discussion right there at a party. Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, just navigating those things have been the biggest hurdles. But I would say that the joy that I get from doing what I'm doing now, the feeling that not only am I on the right path, but that no matter what happens, I have the ability and I trust my ability to figure it out because I have that experience. One of my big things that I say over and over again is courage before confidence. Because I'm sure you hear this from clients and people all the time, and they say, "Oh, I really want to do this, but not yet. I'm just not feeling quite confident yet. I'll do it when I feel a little bit more confident." And it's like, no, no, no. You don't get to feel confident. There's nothing that's going to make you feel confident until you do it once and you don't die, and then you do it again and you still don't die, and you do it maybe 4 or 5 times and it still didn't kill you. Then the 7th time, you're like, I got this. I'm pretty confident. I'm going to be okay. Right. So I feel like I have gone out there. I have summoned my courage enough times and enough situations and come out on top that I trust that now. Now I have the confidence that I'll be okay. I can figure it out. And that I think is a true gift. And it makes those hurdles not such a big deal. Not such a big deal.
Because even when we're on the path that we should be on, I think there's this expectation that there should be no problems along the way. And that's just not true.
Oh, no.
even when we're doing the very thing we're called to do, it's just part of life. There are
Yeah.
going to be challenges.
Yeah. I mean, I've you've probably heard the phrase choose your hard. Choose your hard. My husband is a teacher, a high school and college professor, and he doesn't love having to write exams. He doesn't love having to invigilate exams to proctor them. He doesn't love having to grade homework on the weekends and in the evenings. But he does love teaching the students, and he loves the subject matter, and he loves the things he gets to do, and he loves having his summers off, right? So he's not gonna quit teaching just because he has to grade papers on a weekend once in a while. And so I think that's true for all of us. We have to learn those bumps are gonna come up. Not everything is gonna be perfect all of the time, but we have to choose our hard. Like, what's the hard that you can tolerate?
Yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest transitions for me coming out of being an educator is like, we don't have all this vacation anymore, you know?
Yeah. I know.
In the real world, people don't have, and I taught in the British system a lot, and we had a total of maybe 14 weeks vacation throughout the year.
Hmm.
We don't have
Yeah.
that in the big corporate world.
No. No, it's so unfair, but, that was what it was for me. It's when that hard in whatever it is you're doing, when that becomes that too tight jacket, then you know. Then you know. I, having to perform every weekend and teach lessons most evenings, that was just, yeah, it was something that we all had to deal with as classical musicians. It's just part of the gig, right? It's just it's the grading papers. But it got to the point where I was no longer willing to deal with that, to have that. I wanted something different, right? I wasn't going to tolerate that hard anymore.
And we have to know that we don't need permission from anyone else to make those decisions for ourselves.
Correct, correct. Because I have a lot of colleagues and friends who are brilliant, smart, talented people, and they don't feel that way that I did. They still, this point in their career, probably, maybe forever in their career, there's nowhere they'd rather be at 8 p.m. on a Saturday night than on stage. And that's just them. That's how they're wired. So that's great. So I'm not saying the classical music industry is terrible because we have to work every weekend. I'm saying it was no longer working for me because I changed, I evolved, and that was no longer working for me. It
Hmm.
wasn't the only side of it, of course. It was just one aspect of it. But yeah, I think we have to, as you said, give ourselves permission to make these choices.
Hmm.
Give ourselves the permission.
Kate, how can someone know when it's time to reassess the life and the career that they've built?
I think there are a few clues. I think one of the clues is along the lines of what I felt of that, like, I could keep doing this forever, but I don't want to. Right? If you feel like, "Oh, okay, another day doing this," and you start to think like, "Okay, am I gonna do this for the rest of my life? For the rest of my career anyway?" Most musicians play until their dying breath, so it really is the rest of their life, but, um, we would feel terrible if we heard a story if I told you when you asked that initial question of was the path laid out for me or was it chosen for me? If I said, no, I never wanted to go into music. My parents forced me. They locked me in a room and made me practice and wouldn't give me dinner until I had done 12 hours a day. And everybody would say, like, this is horrible. This poor thing. Thank God she finally broke free. Well, we feel bad for people who were forced into a career or forced onto a path by their parents. We should also feel badly for somebody, maybe ourselves, if we're being forced to stay in a career because of a past version of ourselves. So if you start to feel a lot of shoulds, well, I've been doing this for so long. I sacrificed so much, all those years at school. If you start justifying your reasons for staying, right? I mean, I went through that briefly. Like, oh gosh, my parents sacrificed. My parents did not have a lot of money. My mom was a school librarian, and my dad worked at a hardware store. He did not own the hardware store. He worked in a hardware store, and they still bought me a really nice cello and paid for music lessons, which are not cheaper. They sacrificed a lot. I always say my poor brother would have gone on a lot more family vacations if I hadn't played the cello. So I felt a little bit indebted to them. Who am I? They'd sacrificed so much for so many years, and now I just want to do something else. It spoke to that they didn't care. They didn't care. They just wanted me to be happy. I said, do what you want.
That's a good point you've raised there because we create narratives in our head that aren't necessarily true. And I mean, it came from a good place. You were being considerate of what had been done for you. But as you said, your parents, they weren't thinking about that.
They just wanted me to be happy and do what I loved. And of course, my mother felt really justified because my whole life, she was very supportive of my being a cellist. But every once in a while, she'd be like, are you sure you don't want to be a writer? You're a really good writer. Maybe you should be a writer. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what? No, I wrote my essays that I had to write for English class, but I wasn't writing things. My journal, sure. And now I write books. Now I'm a writer. Now I write articles and I write books and I write. So she was very happy about that. She felt justified. I ask a question at the beginning of my book, which is, or I pose a scenario. If you die and you go to heaven and the first person you meet is the version of you who did exactly what you want to do in your life. The big things, the little things. They ran the marathon that you've been talking about running for years and just haven't started training for. They speak the language that you keep telling yourself you want to be fluent in someday, right? They're a brilliant cook. Like whatever it is, everybody is different. But whenever I pose that scenario to a person, they look at me and they go, oh my God. They just sink. They go, oh wow. Because for every single person, every single one of us, there's a gap between who we are and the life we are currently living and who that version is that we have in our own head. We pictured that version. We know the things we want to do. And so when you ask, like, how does somebody know when they're ready for a change like this? When you find that there's a big gap between the person you say you want to be and the person you are and the life that person is living and the life you're living, I want you to stop and I want you to ask why you aren't doing those things. There's always a story. I'm not doing those things because I don't have time. Okay, why don't you have time? Some of those things maybe it's legitimate. Like I'm not training for a marathon because I'm 8.5 months pregnant. Okay, fair enough. Like, maybe this month isn't right. This is not the right time for that. Okay. But in general, what is stopping you? And this is the whole first part of my book, the reassess. And we are reassessing those stories because what often happens is that people find that they've gotten stuck and they haven't allowed themselves to see the possibilities in front of them because of the stories. Well, no, I'm terrible at math. I could never go be an accountant. I could never run my own business because I'm terrible at math. Who says you're terrible at math? I don't know. My seventh grade teacher told me I was hopeless. I go, one frustrated teacher one day told a 12-year-old that they weren't good at something. And that dictated that person's entire life, really? But it happens all the time, right? We know it as teachers, former teachers. We know how careful we have to be with our words because they can have that effect. But it is up to that adult, the adult version of the 12-year-old to say, hey, maybe they weren't right about that. Maybe I could learn math. Maybe I actually just am good at math and I just haven't done enough of it to know that. People tell me, oh, they're not good with money. They're not athletic. They're not fit enough to do that. They're not old enough to do that. They're not young enough to do that. They're not pretty enough to do that. There's always a story that's limiting. And so reassessing those, discovering where they came from, where those stories originated, and then taking the time to rewrite those stories. Maybe I was a terrible math student when I was 12. Maybe I did seem completely hopeless. But you know what? I'm an intelligent person. There's Khan Academy online. Maybe I'll just look at some videos and see what I can do. Start to rewrite those stories and then follow your curiosity.
I love the markers you've given about thinking about the version of yourself that you are today and then that ideal version, the fulfilled version. And if there's a huge gap between those two people, then we have to start asking some questions. I think that's something that anyone listening can do. It's a weighty question, but it's also an inspiring question.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big one. My book is big. I mean, not physically, but It's a book that you can read cover to cover, front to back, and you can get some really great insights and some information and some ideas and take them and run with them. And then you can go back and you can go through it slowly and really do the exercises and take the time to think through all of these things. And that's a bit of a process, right? A lot of people say, oh, they take 30 minutes every morning and they go through it slowly and make their way through the book. And when it came out about just over a year ago, there was, of course, the initial excitement, new book, and everybody's excited. And then it was like crickets. And then after about 6 months, suddenly people started talking about it again and writing it. It's because they were doing the work. And then they started to see the results. And that's when the emails started coming in, the DMs started coming in of like, oh, wow, this was super helpful. So
Yeah, I know you said your book is big. I think I'd like to say it's deep. It's
yeah, deep. That's a much better word for it.
I knew what you meant, but it's
Yeah.
almost like if there's such a thing as self-coaching, if you take the exercises seriously, you can coach yourself through the process. Now, it's better with a coach. I mean, I say that as a coach, but it's nice to do it with someone or in community. But there are it's a nice tool for anyone who really wants to do the work. And the thing that I found most interesting about it was, although your work is focused on helping creatives, people who have gone from similar careers to yours to make transitions, the principles actually are more universal.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So anyone
Uh,
could pick this book up and take something from it.
oh, yeah, it's not just for creatives at all. That's a publishing, they always want you to niche down as small as possible. And one thing that I've loved is that quite a few coaches are getting this book for their clients and just work through these things with their clients. And I love that. It all works in collaboration and community.
Kate, this has been such an enjoyable conversation. I've I've learned so much. I would like to close with this question. In doing this work, I think sometimes the fear can be that I've worked so hard to build this career, this thing. What advice would you give to anyone who's feeling like I don't want to waste everything I've worked so hard to build and start from scratch?
I would reassure them and tell them that nothing is wasted. They will find that they are taking everything that they learned and experienced in their former life, former career, and they are using it in their next one. Whether it's obvious at first or they see it in hindsight, we it's like we have a toolbox that we carry around with us through life. And every experience that we have, everything that we do, every job we do puts really important tools in that toolbox, and we get to take the toolbox with us to the next gig. And so nothing is wasted. You will use it. I am a better coach. I'm certainly a better public speaker. God knows because I was a cellist, because of that whole career. I'm a better conductor. I'm a better board president. I'm a better friend. I'm a better volunteer. I'm a better podcast host. Everything I do in my way because of the career and the experiences I had before then.
So to sum up, Kate said, nothing is wasted.
Nothing is wasted ever.
Kate, thank you so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank
Oh,
you for
me
your
too.
time.
Thank you, Sharlene. It's been great.
I genuinely loved talking to Kate, and her story was just so encouraging to me and so real. I think many people would call her brave for making the decision to walk away from a career which was so unique and, in many ways, very, very privileged. But it was the reasoning behind why she made that decision that got me. She described the feeling about things feeling like they just didn't fit anymore. And that's a very common experience for those who are being called into navigating a major life transition or to restart or reinvent. I also really value that she shared that she didn't just jump from being a cellist into her new chapter. She explained that she had a friend who was a cellist. She knew she wanted to study and she went and became a neurologist or a neurosurgeon and then, came back. She had a very clear path. But I really like that Kate shared that that wasn't her story and that her moving from one thing and finding what she needed to do next was a process. You know, as a life coach, I always want those in similar situations to know that the change from the old to the new it's often a process, and that's okay. There were so many things to take away from what Kate shared, but the point that resonated with me the most is when she said that nothing is wasted, and that all of your experiences and all the things you try along the way are the very things that equip you for your new chapter. I know that's been my own experience, and I know that many of you will be experiencing that that's true for you. So if you are in the situation where you're in the in-between, which I like to call it, don't worry if you're trying things and it's not quite there yet. You're getting there. You're on your journey. Friends, thank you for hanging out with myself and Kate today. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week.